My first question for you is just what sort of projects, professional or personal, are you working on right now?
Well, I guess I'll start with the professional. Currently, I'm a junior front-end developer for SmartBear. I work on the alert site application. So I basically work on the front-end code and help build the UI and UI elements and the user interaction for that product.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yes. In terms of personal, basically I had a little bit of everything, but specifically recently, machine learning projects. I'm getting ready to start a master's program in computer science. And so,
Wow.
yes, so I have to prepare for that because it's a discipline in machine learning.
Mhm.
So I've been kind of just doing little side projects related to that to kind of refresh and re-jog my memory for all that fun stuff that'll be happening, as well as all math fun. But
Such diligence. I'm so jealous. My next question is just kind of what does Black History Month mean to you?
okay, so Black History Month to me means acknowledgement,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean acknowledgement towards me or even particularly to Black like people as a whole. To me, it's acknowledgement that America still has to work on how it educates its students because we shouldn't need a Black History Month. Black History Month shouldn't be necessary.
Mhm.
Every month that we have it, it's kind of a reminder or sort of like an acknowledgement. America's acknowledging that, hey, we need to do better at teaching our history properly. That there isn't just, one side of it. There are other groups, other ethnicities that help make America what it is. And we need to do a better job at teaching that and showing people that. Like when I was in school, I didn't know many Black, people who were famous or invented things or did things. The two that I remembered were George Washington Carver and
Yeah.
Martin Luther King. Those
Yeah.
were like the two given that you always get. But I never learned much about anything else. And so Black History Month to me is kind of just America acknowledging that we need to do better.
I completely agree. A lot of the Black history that I learned was through my own family. So I definitely think the American education system has a lot of work to do. You made so many good points about that. But
I took a African American college course. And
yeah,
I took a pretty easy A, but I ended up learning like a lot of
yeah.
history that I didn't know about. Very interesting and eye-opening. Like, oh wow, I didn't. Why didn't they teach me that? I mean, I didn't.
Really?
For the longest time, I thought the Civil War was fought over state rights. It wasn't until that
Yeah. Like
told me it was fought over slavery, and it was like, that's not what my high
you're
school
like
teacher taught
that's
me.
like wide opening.
Yes.
um so the next question I have here, based on what we just talked about, and so what Black figure inspires you the most? That can be either past, present, or like future.
Well, how about we say this is all of the above, technically speaking?
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of figures, but I'll use one that isn't really talked about too much
Mhm.
and is relevant to kind of the field that I'm in, STEM. Christine Darden. Uh, she was a very big influence once I kind of learned about her in college, that there was this Black mathematician who worked in NASA who got like the highest position that you can get in that field. And to me, that was kind of like, oh, I can do this. STEM isn't just for non-blacks. It's you can do it too. That was basically her. So looking at her, it was like if she can do it in a time period where America was extremely racist, then I can do it now. You know. So
Amazing.
Christine Harden was a big one.
I had no idea. That's so interesting. I'm definitely gonna look her up for sure.
She's still alive. That's what I said, past, present, future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it was a very interesting one.
Was she in that biography Hidden Figures by any chance? Or
Yes.
oh,
In fact, yeah, she was featured in the Hidden Figures book.
awesome. That's on my to read list. So now I'm definitely going to read it.
we had to read it for the for the
For the
class.
thing. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely read that. Now this one's a little bit of a tough one. Can you describe when you have faced racism? I know there's many different instances you could think of. Like, could you,
I
um,
can pick a lot.
yeah,
I
and
think
just kind
the
of like
most,
how you've overcome it as well, too.
I guess the most, I'll start with the most egregious one and the one that like you don't really expect.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and hopefully none of my previous scoutmasters are listening. They were great. But Boy Scouts, I experienced racism in the Boy Scouts. Not here and not with the troop that I was specifically assigned to. We were actually, I think, an almost all black troop with white scoutmasters and a couple other white troop members. But when we did summer camp, we would go to these Boy Scout summer camps, and they were in different states, or they could even be in different countries. And we took one further up north. I think it was Virginia is
Mm-hmm.
where I experienced it. I would like to say it was Virginia. There was North Carolina as well, but that one wasn't as bad. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it was Virginia. And I remember it was my first one, and we would just be like, we were the only troops. There were four of us, and there were three black people in our troop at the time who had gone to the to this summer camp, and we were. I kid you not, there's maybe one other person from a different troop who was black. There were probably over 1,000 scouts, and three of us were black.
Oh, wow.
And you know, of course, you get that like that token feeling, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the racism. The racism was when people didn't think you were around and they would start talking. So
Mm-hmm.
we would be like walking down a trail and you would see people further down the trail and they'd be saying like, man, there's a lot more and then racial slurs in this camp this year than normal. And we were actually called that to our face by one particular troop, a couple of scouts from a particular troop.
Oh.
And our senior patrol leader was spat on during during that.
Oh
So
my.
that was a very pleasant experience.
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
for my part, I did a 5K into a town where everyone was trying to avoid me. You know, the black kid doing a 5K jog through their town, and it kind of reached a point of uncomfortability because too many people were staring, and they were like, "You doing like the get their kids away and all
Mhm.
that fun stuff." To the point where I left the town and waited for other scouts to show up, and I kind of just followed them through the town instead of running through it on my own.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So yeah, those were like the most egregious racism like that I've experienced. And of course, I had the cop stories.
Oh
I've
yeah.
been stopped and frisked multiple times, even at FIU, the school I went to. Not really at FIU, but around the campus,
Mhm.
the Miami police. I'd been stopped and frisked a few times. And I think the funniest example of it was I was in a friend's car, and we were pulled over, apparently for loud music. And when the cop came to our side of the window to explain to us why he had pulled us over, we looked at him confused because we were like, "Officer, there's no radio in this car. We were going to the dealership to get his radio, a new radio, because it had been broken into and taken away. So his radio had been robbed. So but there was no music for that cop to be listening to. And I think if he hadn't had said that, he would have written us down for a ticket. But I think because he had specifically said that as the reason,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of just ripped the ticket and left. And so we went on our way. But that just kind of shows like the reasons that you can be stopped.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, those were that. And of course, you have the typical followed around a store, you know,
Mm-hmm.
shopping, and you have like a manager or whatnot following you around. I've had that. So those are my racism experiences, kind of condensed.
Yeah.
So how I got over them, my sense of humor.
Yeah.
I I don't take that many things seriously when people say things or make fun of me. It's kind of like it was a trait that I had growing up. I was unbelievable because I didn't take words of other people seriously. Like if I don't really know you, then I don't take anything that you'd say to me at
Mhm.
face value. So I felt more bad for the people who were racist towards me. Like, oh man, the ignorance, or or you know, how you get into this sort of headspace. That's gotta suck.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual racism, as long as you didn't get physical with me, it was something I could just laugh off. Like I could just ignore it. Like it never affected me like that.
Mm-hmm.
I never took those things personally. So
Yeah.
that could be a me thing.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that has its own issues. There were things I probably should have taken more seriously, and you know, maybe bringing like getting angry about it a little bit and making a stink about it may have been a good thing to get people to acknowledge it more instead of just laughing it off and walking away.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I dealt with it.
Now, follow-up question for you. Like, because for me, I have been listening to these stories and I'm starting to see a pattern. Do you feel that like Black Americans specifically are told to kind of, or just used to kind of, how do I phrase this? um,
It's all good. Take your time.
just like basically to say like suck it up, or they have that exterior strength that
I figured that's what you were getting at.
yeah, they'll get over it. Yeah, I was just trying to put
the whole, for example, like the whole reparations,
yeah.
when that was being talked about and people are like, hey, get over it. Slavery was 100 years ago and you didn't experience it. So, you know, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
I get that a lot. And yeah, I've definitely been told that multiple times when discussing things like that. And I think those people don't really realize that there are extreme lasting effects that slavery in America has. And the fact that it wasn't really that long ago, to the point where there are people, you have audio recordings of slaves. That's how short it has been since slavery was a thing. There were slaves still alive when voice recording was invented. So there are people's great-grandparents or grandparents who have experienced racism if they've lived long enough. And, or slavery, I should say, not racism, but slavery. And so it hasn't really been that long. And that whole get a thick skin and don't deal with it, you'll realize the hypocrisy in it because those same people are the same people who are going to complain that they're being called racist. You know, like I'm angry that I got called racist for saying racist thing. And so those are the same people who will typically tell you to suck it up, or the people who aren't dealing with it, basically. That's what it comes down to. I guess it's an American, it's probably not an American issue, it's probably a human issue, but most people don't really take issues seriously if those issues don't affect them. And because the majority of people in this country don't experience that, the majority don't see it as a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
They think it's done. So
we're very aware of that official, well, if you don't like it, then leave kind of stance.
Back to Africa, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not African. So why would I go back there? I'm American. So that's always my retort to that, you know? Exactly. So, I mean, there are plenty of people who have issues, but we don't tell them to leave when you know, have those problems. That's kind of why America has the system that is set up right now, so that you can, you know, vote for change or protest for change. That's kind of the point. You don't just leave.
Yeah. On that note, just like talking about 2020 in general, 2020 was just a mess. It was a lot of stuff, a lot of emotions, a lot of things happening. What was a lesson or some learning point in 2020 that you took away from it?
America still needs to grow up.
Yes, 1000%.
Yeah, for me, the learning point was that there's still huge elements of that ignorance, that fear. Not all of it racism, but definitely racism is a byproduct of it. That I thought all of that was gone. That was a minority thing, you know, like there were only small fringe groups of people who were like that, and it wasn't that big. But basically the whole of 2020, 2019 even, were big indicators that that wasn't the case. And then if I bring up politics, I guess the election kind of showcased that there are a huge, and not a small, a very huge portion of the population who, while they may not be racist, they are okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was a big wake-up call that, you know, this hasn't gone away. It's still there and it's still big. It's just not in our faces anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's probably just as bad. So that's kind of what I learned, that we haven't really gotten better. We've gotten better at hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, based on where you're located, were there in June of 2020, were there a bunch of protests at all? Or I know, like, for example, here I'm in Boston. So in Boston, there were a lot of protests. There was a lot of macing, a lot of.
not really. I was at a few when we were at FIU, but that was around 2018. So it definitely wasn't the you know, the George Floyd riots and stuff of that nature that were going on, and the protesting there. So no, not really. They're just a couple people who would kind of walk every now and again with the signs, but nothing really big. There were a few in Miami though that I'd gone to that were bigger, definitely bigger. There was a huge walk, and I did that one. But I haven't really done any of like the major ones that you could say.
Gotcha. And then I guess this will be our last question. Based on everything that we've talked about so far, do you have any like parting advice to inspire the young generation, especially the younger generation in tech that are interested in a career in tech?
You can do it. It's not just, you know, a field for you know, dare I say, white people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a field just for them. There may not be many of us,
Mm-hmm.
but that can change, and it changes if you just do it. Get the degree, get the education. You don't even need the degree. Go to like a coding boot camp, or learn everything that you can on YouTube, and then try and get an entry position somewhere. Just put your mind to it and do it. Don't let other people tell you that's not something you should do, or you can't do that. You know, that's something that constantly happens to us. We get told, you know, don't do this, do sports,
Mm-hmm.
do music, because those are the most easily accessible that people think. Like, America's not ready for this, or America's not ready for that yet. So you have to do this until we're there. Don't wait, just do it. This field, there's a lot of us who have done major things in it. So you can be one of them too if you just put your mind to it and don't let other people tell you no.
Amazing. Very powerful.
Thank you.